phenomenal episode of the Arcane Archive. Once again, we are bringing to you here a brand new segment for the channel, one that we sort of teased a while back now, and we're finally getting to it right now. It's the first Dude What If episode, where me and Sammy here are gonna kind of throw your way like a couple of little interesting, twisty combinations and strange unubiquitous things that you might not necessarily have thought about or considered. You know, we might throw at you maybe some classes and subclass combinations and things, or like really shitty ones that we tried to make better, but maybe we didn't. Maybe we still failed and there's just no real way around it. Other times we'll throw at you just some rather strange or interesting, cool, badass combinations that like completely went a direction that we weren't expecting it to. Regardless, either way, we hope that you enjoy and are entertained by the usual chaos and craziness that these little showcases should elicit. Sammy, would you like to please take it first? Because I know that you have a particularly interesting personal choice today that you'd like to share with everybody. So please take it away, my friend.
Well, I have a this is a character I made as a backup for a multi-shot within a campaign. We were already at like level 17 or so, so I just popped it up to 20. It is a combination of Oath of the Watchers Paladin and Horizon Walker Ranger. Now, when you think Paladin, you're like, wait a minute. You know, this is a guy swing a big sword, hit things, or use a shield so they don't get hit. Mine does neither. It is a dual wield build.
I was gonna say there's some many might think at first there might be a bit of conflict or clash there with
maybe
Ranger and
I
Paladin.
can tell you for certain this class does not specialize in ranged combat. Although you give it a bow, it can perform just as well as anyone with a bow. But my focus was to make a dex-based dual wielding Paladin Ranger combo.
Interesting.
Specifically, this was a class that was supposed to be set in the past in that campaign, so more of a tribally setting. So not with a bunch of magic items and with a bunch of fancy metal armor and all of this stuff. And so that has led to like my racial choice and background choice, which might not be the most optimal, but I actually think it worked quite well, which is why I went for it in the beginning. Both Oath of the Watchers and Horizon Walker were subclasses I'd wanted to play at one point or another, and I thought since both of them had something to do with, you know, guarding extraplanal portals and finding out how things are getting into the material plane, it actually worked quite well.
Oh yeah, thematically speaking, the
considering
two blend very well together.
Yeah, and it worked well for the idea of the multi-shot. We had people going into the past through a planar portal, and so that would have been, you know, why this character even ended up there at all. To start off with, I'll go over the ability scores. Now, we had rolled these as a group for anytime we had a character leave or die, we needed backup characters. And so we rolled as a group. Each one of us rolled one of the stat points, and we ended up with 10, 10, 11, 13, 14, 18. Now, my DM has a... you're allowed to, if you take a negative, so if say you reduce that 10 to an 8, you can bump up another score by 1 instead of 2, with the idea that, you know, if you wanted to, you can even out something. I changed one of those 10s to an 8 and changed the 11 to a 12. So my final stat line is 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 18. Now, pretty good stat line. If not too bad. If not a great stat line, honestly.
I mean, with that 18 is
that
huge.
18 is killer.
That's huge.
The only time I've rolled better than this myself was when I rolled a 16, 3 14s, a 12, and a 10.
That's pretty crazy.
I went barred with that because you might as well. Jack of all trades means I'm good at everything.
Literally.
Now, at level 20, their scores are 8 strength, 20 dexterity, 18 con, 10 intelligence, 12 wisdom, and 18 charisma. Now, some of you are like, oh, but wisdom, you're a ranger. You don't really need it if you pick the right spells.
Yeah,
And
a lot of ranger spells don't like,
I picked very specific spells for this. Obviously you can exchange those out. The only magic item I'm taking uh was a crystal rapier because I thought, hey, if I'm allowed one magic item, it's going to be more natural rather than man-made. So in my case, it was just a big crystal with a handle on it. But the reality being is like you could totally, better armor would suit this build. Any magic items, pretty much anything you could throw in here and it'd be like, oh, you can use that.
I was
For
gonna
my
say,
sake,
yeah,
I'm going to stick away from the items just because I think this build doesn't really need a whole lot.
fair enough.
Obviously, you throw something on there, it can be good. There's always ways to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
But for my case, we'll go into the level breakdown because I think that's the well. I'll give you like I guess the background it shows and stuff like that.
Sure.
Let's see. I went Durgar as the race.
Okay.
The reason being I thought it would be cool, and also
I mean, they get a lot of dope shit for
they
their
get
whole thing,
resilience, they get
man.
dark vision, they get psionic fortitude. So
I mean, they also get like enlarge and reduce,
oh yeah,
like
Durgar
as
magic.
as a it's pretty badass, yeah.
But I thought, saving throws on to avoid or end the charmed or stun condition is good. Dwarven resilience is good because poison's always a thing.
It's true.
And then Durgar magic, I chose charisma as the trait, being that it is an 18. But it allows me to cast enlarge once a day, or enlarge reduce once a day, or once per long rest, unless I want to use my own spell slots,
Mm-hmm.
or as well as invisibility, which do both good spells. The fact that once a day I can go invisible is a huge
That
bonus.
helps hella for a lot, especially if like, you're a stealth or rather a dex based character as well. As you're kind of moving up, like I assume, are you planning on taking like lighter armor because you're a dex based, I would
Yeah, we'll
say?
get into that. We'll get into that now.
Okay.
I am Outlander, just for the sake of
That's
Outlander.
always nice. That's always helpful.
Currently, my inventory, aside from the crystal rapier, there is. I went with studded leather.
Mm.
Obviously, if I had another magic item, I would have probably upgraded armor next.
Hmm.
Um, but my armor class with studded leather, my dexterity, a defense fighting style, and dual wielder is at 19. So that's pretty good considering I have health. And realistically, the one thing I would wanted to do is get a better set of armor.
Yep.
So that's probably one of the big improvements here is ostensibly maybe a second magical weapon and armor. This is a fighting class. There is some utility, but it's limited to some of the lower level ranger and paladin spells.
Okay.
But for the most part, it's going to be either fighting with two rapiers or a longbow. Um,
I
which is
like
still,
it. I like the
yeah,
dual rapier. You got a real
yeah.
musketeer vibe going on there. I like that.
Now I kind of would flavor them more. It's a little bit more primal, but rapier was the best choice. Obviously, if your DM permits, you can always change what they look like. I have a DM that kind of
Yeah.
lets you switch stuff out as long as you
I
keep your
don't
damage
see
dice.
any, yeah, I don't see any different. Like that is the one thing about fifth edition overall, I feel like is lacking is, a little bit more
Weapon
flavor,
versatility,
yeah,
yeah.
or
See,
versatility and like the types of weapons you can use that would still be effective.
like in my
Like,
opinion, these would be more akin to thrusting swords.
yeah.
They're a little bit thicker, but they're still more
Yeah, and
dexterity based than
they still
strength.
have an edge. They have an edge like
Hmm.
at the end to like still,
But they're more
but
of a
they're not.
piercing. They're obviously a piercing weapon, and
Yeah.
that's kind of the goal is to get up and to just stab people until they're not moving.
Yep.
Um, for context, at level 20, I rolled HP. I could have rolled higher. I'm at 235. It wasn't the greatest roll, but it's above the average roll.
That's still, I was gonna say, over 235,
For
over 200 hit points. Like
for
again, you would
context,
have D10s, but still, that's pretty great.
my total possible is 280.
Yeah, so you're definitely above average to
Yeah, average is about 200.
yeah. So
So
you definitely lucked out real well with that for
yeah,
sure.
I did pretty well on the rolling.
Yeah.
For the level split, we'll go over that now. It is 8 paladin, 12 ranger. Um,
Okay.
now
What
I
was your mindset? Yeah, and going more ranger than paladin.
so for me, the way I build characters, this is by far not a a completely power gamed build. I kind of go with the flow on how I do things. I usually look
Mhm.
as to where can I get my next ability score improvement.
Fair for them. That definitely is a big thing for them. Absolutely.
So for me, for Paladin, I went. I wanted to at least get Aura of Protection.
Okay.
Um, the 7th level Sacred Oath feature, because for that Paladin, it is the bonus to initiative. So I wanted that bonus to initiative at 7th level.
All
So I
right.
knew I had to at least take 7 levels. I thought, well, I might as well take 8 levels for the ability score improvement.
Mm-hmm.
And
That checks out.
that's
Makes
kind of where
sense
I
to
was
me.
at. For Ranger, getting to 12th level, I wanted to get Distance Strike on Oath of Watchers. Also, Hide in Plain Sight's great. Landstride and all those other things I think are good for Ranger. And 12th level was also the ability score improvement. So I did the math beforehand and I realized 12 and 8 is probably a decent split. You could lessen one or the other, although not really by much, because both the 11th level Ranger archetype for Horizon Walker, which is Distance Strike, which is the teleporty around while
Yep. You get to
swinging,
like, yeah.
and the 7th level Sacred Oath feature for Aura of the Sentinel, which is the initiative plus, I think are both pretty big pieces. The reason I say that is because obviously we've talked about multi-classing before. The issue with multi-classing is you do lose out on some big abilities later on. So my goal with this class was to find a couple middle to lower level abilities in these classes that are worth keeping and using throughout the rest of the game. And to me, the blinking while fighting, so being able to move around the battlefield is huge,
Yep. That's super powerful.
especially because technically I can attack 3 times. With dual wielding allows me to blink more than you would with, like, say, just making 2 attacks a turn. Obviously, it requires me already having set up things like Hunter's Mark or other things like
Yeah,
that.
ahead of
But
time to
still,
maximize, yeah, damage, of
the
course.
the reality is um, that I didn't want to lose out on either of those abilities.
Fair.
For context, I know we've talked about this before. Um, Distance Strike for Horizon Walker is when you take the attack action, you can teleport up to 10 feet before each attack to an unoccupied space you can see. Never mind, it has to be your action attacks. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um,
But you can
if
still
you
get a bonus action
you
attack at
can
the end, though.
actually no, that's not. You don't even have to use a bonus action. If you attack at least 2 different creatures with the action, you can make 1 additional attack with it against a third creature. So
Well, there you
technically,
go.
I can make 4 attacks per round.
Yep.
3 of them have to be against different creatures.
Yep.
But still, it's a way of spreading the damage and moving around the battlefield with an interesting. It's an interesting tactic. I don't have in practice whether or not this is how usable that's going to be. Um,
Well, it's obviously situational in terms of whether or not how many enemies your GM is throwing at you in an
mhm.
encounter. So obviously, if you're fighting like one big boy, I mean, you can still use your teleport thing, of course. You just, you would still get your normal 3 attacks because,
Mhm.
you'd hit them with the normal multi-attack, double attack,
And
and
then a
then
bonus action.
bonus action offhand attack.
Yeah.
So
Also, teleporting is still teleporting, and
that's what I'm saying. Especially for you as a paladin, like, and ranger, like you're primarily going to want to be melee fighting because I don't believe you can divine smite on a ranged attack. But that's why you're gonna always
no,
want to be getting up in there, and that
that's
that
yeah.
teleportation can help a lot, even if it's only 10 feet. It's like that essentially still gets you, 40 feet of movement,
Mhm.
like at just baseline, and not including if you have any other bonuses specifically to your movement. So
Yeah.
that's pretty dope.
Now, uh, for me personally, like, I took a couple skills that I thought were good. Athletics, which I have expertise in due to Ranger, perception, persuasion, stealth, and survival.
Hmm.
Um, the reality being, I took like Pass Without Trace as a spell that I have, and for Ranger spells, I took mostly utility. For Paladin spells, I took a couple smites, just because I get them automatically, as well
Hmm.
as things like Command, Cure Wounds, Find Steed, Hunter's Mark. Um, what else did I get? Prayer of Healing, Revivify. So my spells, and I get haste as well from Horizon Walker.
I mean,
So
that's what I
that's
was
a
gonna
big
say.
one.
That's huge.
Um,
That's huge for you.
mhm. You also get Misty Step, and so like
Also fucking
I
phenomenal.
have some pretty good movement. The only thing I
Yeah,
don't
you
have
got
is
great movement
I don't have any
options.
flight, which is the only thing at a level 20 that you're like, but at the same time,
Yeah, but again, you could offset that with items too. Like you haven't even really applied any real
yeah.
items to that as well. So you could technically offset that with a number of different items to your credit. And so like that in and of itself, like the flight thing isn't that big of a deal because yeah, you
Mhm.
can definitely remedy that super easy. If your GM, of course, is benevolent and allows you to like search out certain things.
The only thing I could think of is Find Greater Steed. I thought that was a paladin spell, is it not?
It is.
I wonder if
Find Greater Steed is just a paladin spell. No other class except for like, Bard or maybe Warlock can get it due to like, their whole magical secrets or arcanum features. But otherwise it's just a paladin spell.
I'm
But
wondering.
you specifically only get find great I think level 13 because like level 13 for paladins is when you get access to fourth level spells.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so
Um,
unfortunately you wouldn't be able to get it, but
that's the only.
lesser steed or fine
I
steed is
have
still
Find
pretty good.
Steed
Yeah,
just
fine
for
steed is pretty
movement.
good. And even then, like
Um,
greater steed is like, you get access to like, Pegasus or Griffin or a rhinoceros or saber-tooth tiger. Like I believe like yeah, they're the challenge rating is usually in that area. Like,
mhm.
and so it's like, it's not a huge leap to be
No, it would
fair.
just be Flying Steed would be the only thing. But
Yeah, that
the
would be the
reality
only.
is this class definitely performs better on its feet.
Yeah.
Um, for I guess kind of what they can do versus what they're good at. It's definitely going to be a melee fighter right in the thick of things.
Yeah.
I could make the claim that it's midline. It's not necessarily like a tank. Um,
I mean,
that
in a way, like, cause you're like, what is your AC currently at?
19.
Like, yeah, and that's without any augmented armor or anything
Hmm.
with it. Like
Hmm.
that in and of itself, like if again, you give yourself like a +3, or even just a +2, like studded leather with that, like that would increase it to probably 20 alone. And then, if you had like like a cloak of protection or whatever else, that would take it up even higher. If
Yeah.
you literally took Shield of Faith, you get an instant, or you utilize haste. That's another
Yeah. That's
+2
another plus
instantly
four.
right there.
Yeah.
Like, so you have
So
plenty of options in regards to like defense, and you have 230 like hit points. Like, you literally are a tank at that point. Like,
yeah.
you
Now,
can, it's hard to hit you, and even if you can, you take that damage like nobody's business.
I
Like,
also, I mean, I did take absorb elements for the fact that my saving throws are not necessarily like they're not all the greatest. Obviously, having a +4 to all saves
I
via
was gonna
paladin
say, yeah, with your paladin,
is
like
huge.
that's huge. Like
Um,
that's ginormous.
my weakest one by far is strength and intelligence at a +3 or a +4, respectively.
Yep.
Everything else is above 8. I have con +8, dex +9, wisdom +11, charisma +14.
Yep.
Um, and I have the advantage on charmed and stunned, and advantage to avoider and poison. Um, the real fun part for me is the fact that I also have a +11 to initiative. And that's without, taking alert or, something of that nature. The only thing that is to be, a little desired, my walking speed's only 35. If I could have taken mobile, would have been
Yeah,
cool.
would have been nice, of course,
Um,
but
then again, haste is something I can do.
I was gonna say haste
Um,
just kind of clears
and
that whole thing up. Like
having a +8 to con saves is pretty decent,
it's
I would
pretty
say.
awesome.
Um, now kind of what they're good at per se. It's really just going to be fighting. I don't have a lot of like my support is limited. Obviously, I can do speak with animals, plants, beast sense, stuff like that.
Yep.
And the reality is this was meant to find portals and kill whatever's coming out of them.
Yeah, you're a
So
straight
things
hunter.
like yeah. I thought it would be cool to have kind of a hunter vibe combined with divine magic. Especially considering a lot of things that come out of extraplanar portals do not do well against radiant. Whether that's keeping them from regenerating, some of them are weak to radiant damage if it's from the abyss. So kind of, I have some smites. I still have a good amount of spell slots considering I stuck with ranger as opposed to going into a non-caster. So I haven't lost out on too many smites per se.
Yeah.
Obviously I didn't get max level smites. That's the only thing. Is that I do have 5th level spell slots though as a ranger, so I can use those for smite.
All right.
I believe I have, let's just do, I still have 2 5th levels, 2 5th levels, 3 4th levels. I have the ability to use my divine whatever it is, the divine sense. I can
You have your
use it
divine
to,
sense. I think at 8th level, do you have improved divine smite or no?
no,
Okay,
that's the
gotcha.
only thing I don't have.
Yeah.
Which again, that was kind of one of the things I guess that you could switch around. You could, I guess, take away ranger, go more into paladin.
Yep.
Either way, I believe you would still get, the only thing you're missing out on is distance strike. You would still get both ability score improvements. For me, I wanted to be more ethereal in that way. I thought it would be more
Yeah,
fun.
that's fair.
Obviously, if you look at this and you're like, I want improved divine smite, go for it.
Yeah, ain't nothing
Um,
wrong with that, like
Realistically, I think it works either way. One is obviously more focused on damage. The other one is more focused on being a shit. Uh,
yeah.
the 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 cool part is I can harness divine power to fuel my spells, so I can get 2 level 3 spell slots left if I don't want to use my channel divinity.
Yeah.
But I took favored foe as opposed. I took the replacements from Tasha's. So
Yeah,
favored
that's fair.
foe and primal awareness, um, and what's the other ability? There's one called, I think it's Landstride or something like that.
Yeah, Landstride, I believe, is the other optional thing that you can fucking do.
Yeah, Landstride. So I'm good at traveling, which is fun. But yeah, it's supposed to be a more woodsy character. I think if this was part of more of like a divine order, you could push more
I
into
mean, I
paladin
would
as
say,
opposed to ranger.
maybe again, I definitely, yeah, it's definitely a wanderer. Obviously, it's usually called Horizon Walker / Watcher. Like your whole thing is to patrol the literal boundary between realms, dimensions, and realities in order to like keep back
Mhm.
the horrible thing. Like literally, we talked about the dark incursions that can happen from like the abyss and shit. Like that's exactly what this guy is meant to do, and
Yeah.
he fulfills that role very nicely and very
And
well.
I mean, for me, it was, you know, if this was someone that was maybe part of an established order that stayed in one place, going more into paladin would make sense.
Yeah.
The reason I picked Durgar, I'm remembering now, is for abyssal incursions specifically. I thought
Mm,
that would be a cool, because especially we've talked about before, and I made this character after we did our episode on the abyss. Um, I thought that putting together someone that's like, I find abyssal portals before they become a problem, and I kill anything that comes out of it.
yeah.
That is, that's what I've done for years. Anytime it's almost like a second nature to find these things and stop them from opening up. And I thought that was a cool concept. I liked both subclasses. I think we've talked about both of them before.
Yeah.
And it was something that I'm like, you know what? I want to combine the two of these into something fun. Um, by far as this is not, I mean, I think probably taking out or changing around from ranger doing Ranger 8, Paladin 12 would technically make this character more powerful, maybe. The
I
extra
well,
for it is
yeah,
speed.
obviously like that because that's the thing. Like I was actually recently talking with someone because I'm gonna be doing, I think I told you a little about this. I'm gonna be doing like a bit of a session 0-1 maybe multi-shot for some friends that wanted to get involved and everything. I did ask them if they wanted to like kind of record for it, if they were open to that. Some of them were a bit like nervous and like uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and they wanted to maybe get a little bit more comfortable with the game before maybe we did that. And I was like, that's perfectly fine. That's okay. So I'm still gonna like maybe run a little something for them. But we kind of talked about like with one of them about like what she wanted maybe for like a character, like what kind of her thing was. And she was like, maybe I'll just like pick something random or something. And I'm like, well, you can, but I can usually tell you it's usually it's more important, and you'll have a better or a higher chance of having a better experience if you're more like kind of clear on what specifically you're wanting to experience in the game, like what you're
Yeah.
trying to do. And it's like because she picked Paladin first, and I'm like, okay, here's the thing. I love Paladins. They're great. They're a fan favorite, but they kind of are very singular in what they do. They
Unfortunately.
are the destroy all things around you. Like they are heavily primarily combat focused in almost every aspect of their abilities and features.
Yeah.
They have role play potential because of their charisma, of
Mhm.
course, and like with their certain skills, but none of their spells that they get or any of their abilities really augment or provide a lot more like diversity when it comes to, the three pillars of D&D. They are very heavily focused on the combat portion rather than either exploration or role play. Like they
Oh
they
yeah.
they they kind of they branch out a little into the role play, but they are absolutely the quintessential just we are the divine holy warriors that will destroy everything that gets in our way. Like
You know,
that's
paladins have some utility spells and things like that. Now, the problem with paladin is you want to use those for smites, though. So
generally speaking, yeah,
in
that's kind of what you'd want to focus on.
in a non-combat scenario, um, they are not the greatest utility characters.
Mhm.
They can have some. I think things like their auras and certain things like that are to me are considered utility
Oh
and
yeah,
support
but they're still usually in regards
in
to
regards to combat.
combat rather than any
Um,
other area is the thing.
yeah, and now to me, I think this gives it a little bit more of a utility focus. Things like helping with travel time and figuring where things are and tracking stuff down is all something that I think adds a breath of fresh air to this class that I didn't have before.
Mhm.
Um, but combines two things that I think I could see both of these subclasses as level 20 characters working on the same thing. And
Yes,
so
absolutely. They would interconnect and
me putting
and
them together I think works well and is a fun concept.
yeah, I mean, I love that again, the aspect. It's not necessarily even more so just about like the mechanics of it. It's
Mhm.
literally the overall flavor, mechanics, role play, and everything that just blend together really nicely. Even though again, people could make the arguments like, oh, well, that's not the most mechanically viable or sound combination. It's like, well, no, but it's still very interesting. Like it again literally covers all three pillars of the game, such as,
Mhm.
exploration. You're literally an outlander wanderer of trying to find these places and locations in the world to guard and protect. You literally, again, with roleplay as a paladin and even as a ranger too, to a certain extent, you have versatility in interacting with both urban environments and the more natural wild environments because of that. And then obviously, you're the two highly combat focused and centric classes with paladin and ranger. Definitely they normally aren't ones that you would expect to see together due to the fact that again normally literally they have two different primary stats you normally focus on, such as ranger is dex and wisdom and paladin is usually strength and charisma. But there's nothing that ever says that you can't make a dex based paladin. Like
Nope.
there's no real restrictions. Usually just expected kind of to go that route. So that in of itself also provides a little bit more interesting like subversion of expectation, which I think is
Yeah.
really cool.
And for me, it's one of those things where I'm one of those people that, as fun as it is to just build a character, one class all the way up, I do like multi-classing because it allows me to do different things.
Yeah.
The fact that in a turn, technically, if I want to, I can designate a target with the Horizon Walker, and now all of my damage becomes force damage, which includes if I smite.
Smites. Yep.
So if I hit you and I smite, and I can add my 2d8 from the smite or more depending on the spell slots. I can add another 2d8 from the Horizon Walker mark. What's it called? Come on game. Planar Warrior.
Yep.
So I can designate, all of that, and smite you. And if I have Hunter's Mark on you or the built-in Hunter's Mark from Horizon Walker, that's a good amount of damage before you even factor in the weapon. So I can do that with a rock if all I care, for all I care.
Yeah, no, you really could if you wanted to. Like you could use a slingshot and just peg people with that and still technically apply your Horizon Walker damage. And so it's like, yeah, it technically turns all damage that you deal in that attack into force. So that would include your Divine Smite damage. I mean, at least there's nothing that I can see that would conflict that. So Jesus, just imagine a forced Divine Smite. Fucking crazy. All right.
I think that's fun. I mean, it gets past a lot of resistances, that's for sure.
It can. There are very few things that have innate resistances to force damage. And so it definitely, like, even certain enemies that are like, oh, they like react to if you deal radiant damage to them.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, well, they do certain things where you're like, certain devils or demons. It's like, well, guess what? I don't have to deal radiant damage to you with this.
What I also like is it's also kind of a way, if you were to choose, to hide the fact that you're a paladin. Because the moment you go to do that damage, in my eyes, if I can choose to have everything be force damage, when I go to charge up my sword, it's almost like the air tightens around it as opposed to like this flash of radiant energy.
I was gonna say it might just be like energy that kind of coalesces, like like kind of like coats the blade itself as you then strike out, except instead of it being a burst of radiant energy.
Yeah. And to me, I was like, ooh, that's even cooler.
That is pretty dope, honestly. Any other like little tidbits or things that you want to kind of talk about it and discuss it? Like what was kind of some of your inspiration for kind of putting this together? Anything in particular? Again, did you just kind of see the two subclasses and you're like, I love these two things? Or was there more of a...
I'm the kind of person that when a new subclass comes out, I read all of them, except for Oath of Crown, evidently.
Well, I mean, that's not necessarily a new one, to be fair.
Well, when it came out, I didn't.
Yeah.
Because I was like, nah, I don't care.
Because it's,
for me,
Ghost of Interest guy.
Yeah, well, I block that from my memory most of the time. But for me,
some of the best subclasses ever, and then some of the
Swashbuckler.
Blade Singer
and Blade Singer. So when these classes came out, I remember specifically for Horizon Walker, I wanted to play one.
That was really cool. Horizon Walker
ended
really
up
dope.
Unfortunately playing, well, not unfortunately, because there's another one I wanted to play all three of the Ranger subclasses that came out: Horizon Walker, Monster Hunter, and Gloomstalker. Now, I think Monster Hunter is by far to me, I think Monster Hunter is the weakest of the three in terms of like pizzazz.
Well,
it does fine.
It's that the least bells and whistles for sure, but I would say in terms of effectiveness and just raw power, it's probably like, I would say Horizon Walker, ironically, would probably be the least, in
100%.
terms of raw power.
Raw power, sure. But I liked what it had to offer. I like the the theme,
the flavor definitely helps.
Now,
like
I was gonna play one in Curse of Strahd.
Ooh, that could have been really cool.
My DM was like, there's no way for you to leave. You shouldn't play a class that benefits from finding extra planar portals. There are none. And I went, I'm playing Gloomstalker.
Yep, Gloomstalker.
And I played a melee dual wielding Gloomstalker Ranger. It was great. He's dead now because it's Curse of Strahd. He went out fighting for his, he went out
with a bang. Yeah, he went out with a bang. That's great.
He killed one of the like royalty people too.
Yeah,
he sniped him off his horse. It was awesome. Not a good guy, but so I never got to play the character. I was like, man, I really want to play this character. I had the opportunity, and I'm like, okay, what's a subclass that isn't super magical that could be around in a more tribal, smaller civilization time period? And I went, ooh, Horizon Walker. We already have a theme of interplanar travel in this campaign. Ooh, planes. And then I was like, well, what can I do to make this different? Because if I just bring a single class character to the table, everyone's going to look at me as, what happened to you? Why are you just playing a normal character? All of your other characters
It's
have
so
been,
unlike you. It's so
yeah, all
weird.
of your other
Like,
characters have had these
who
weird
died?
things. Yeah,
Like,
who died?
what?
And who hurt you?
Yeah, who hurt you?
And so my first thought was, well, I want this to be a ranger first and foremost, but what can I do to make it interesting? And it was paladin. I was thinking of what I
Little
could
extra
combine with
bang
it,
for your buck, like literally.
and I didn't want to go full caster as my second class. And I
Fair
thought,
enough.
well, I'll go for another. Are they quarter casters or half
They're
casters?
half casters technically.
Yeah. And so I was like, I'll go with a half caster. And paladin was the first one up there, especially because to me, um, both ranger and paladin are classes that, depending on what spells you pick, you don't necessarily need a high spellcasting modifier.
No, a
Um,
lot of it. I mean, there are like saves and stuff for
sure,
some of them, but a lot of
sure.
them are also they
Most of
they're just bonus
the
damage or support a lot of the
yeah,
time. Like they can be very, like healing, or it's just like you get bonus stuff and it's like you don't really need to be using your spell slots for all that anyway, because smites. And you don't get a shit ton of spell slots to begin with, even with them. So it's like you want
and for me,
usually
the best ranger spell, like I know people look at ranger and they're like, not a good class. I don't think the ranger spells are good. Things like conjure barrage and stuff like that. I don't find
no.
them very
I
effective.
mean, ensnaring strike is actually really freaking good.
Yeah,
It's surprising how good ensnaring strike is.
yeah,
Like when you hit it with the right dude, it's kind of crazy.
it
But
is.
it's definitely the vast majority of their spells are not awesome. You're always only gonna take a very select few specific ones like absorb elements, Zephyr Strike, cure wounds, just to have that available.
And so for me, I was like, I'm not going to be taking ranger damage spells, so I can dump wisdom a little bit. I can rely on the fact that my proficiency bonus is high enough that the stuff I would need from wisdom, like perception and survival, will still be decently high.
Yeah.
A +7 is still fine, in my book. And so my paladin spells as well, a lot of them are utility. Both classes also get utility spells because of their subclasses. That for me, I'm like, I'm not using these spells. Either I'm using utility or I'm hitting with divine smite.
Yeah.
And so for me, my spell choices were along those lines. I have some defensive spells, some healing spells. I made sure to take Revivify as like a combat medic. But I'm not a healer by any means.
Mm-hmm.
I have some options in case we are fresh out, in case no one takes healing. You
Yep.
know,
Again, you
uh,
got the lay on hands. You got a decent pool of
and
lay on
prayer.
hands.
What
You
is it?
got
Healing
prayer,
prayer, whatever. Prayer of
prayer
healing.
of healing is decent. You usually have to do it outside of combat, of
But
course, but like it
again,
still is a great like healing thing. Like again, it's essentially like a bit of a short rest without having to spend an hour. It's just 10 minutes, and if as soon as you're done, or if you have a little bit of time to like recuperate and rest, it's great.
yeah. So that was kind of my idea behind it. And it's funny that now that I look at it with you, I'm finding what I could also do.
Yep.
The
Other ways you could, and again, you haven't even augmented it with like items specifically with that particular build. It's already quite viable and cool and flavorful and beefy, all on its own without
Yeah,
even the introduction of like legendary or rare, very rare items. Because at level 20, you're definitely gonna have at least like a decent horde of shit at
yeah.
that
The
point
only item I
too.
have here on here is a rare weapon, which is the crystal rapier, which does
Yeah.
extra radiant damage. That's all
Yep.
I have on here.
That's.
Um, but that's it. uh,
Honestly, I'd say it's pretty good, Sammy. It's like overall it doesn't necessarily like blow things out. It's not like broken OP ridiculous, but it does everything that they're really needing to do really well in a multitude of ways. And I definitely would say that gets the Arcane Archive stamp of approval. That's what we love. We love that it specifically does the things that it needs to do well, and it chalks off again those multiple tags of, exploration, combat and roleplay. You know, it
I don't know
has a little bit of
if I were
everything.
to show this to some of the people that I play D&D with, that power gaming thing that's right below my face they're gonna
Uh-huh.
claim. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But I don't
Uh-huh.
feel that way. I didn't, for me this isn't
It really doesn't.
to me this is the same as building a competent
It's not,
character.
yeah, it's not power gaming. Like there's nothing about it that is particularly busted or broken overall. Like
Yeah.
it's, and in fact, there are certain things you could say that you miss out on specifically because you did it this way. But phenomenal job, Sammy. We gotta love it. Do you have a name for this character at the moment?
I believe my stand-in name, which was one of the random name, was Corsac, which I
Corsac.
which sounded like a Durgar name to me.
I could see that. Yeah,
Yeah,
Corsac.
no last name
Could
because
make
I'm a
could make a lot
wanderer.
of make a lot of jokes with that
Sure,
particular
I
name,
don't
but
care.
that's fair.
That's
Mr.
fine. Most
Corsac,
most
the
of my
Duragar Horizon Walker Watcher, Corsac.
Horizon Watcher.
I like Horizon Walker Watcher. Like it rolls off the tongue a little bit. The Horizon Walker Watcher, you know.
But
All
yeah.
right. Yeah.
What did you get into?
So yeah, I went a bit of a route. In fact, I did something a little bit more, a little bit interesting here. Whereas I decided to go with a Trinity hybrid character this time, not just a simple half and half or like one or two. I specifically have three multi-class options combined together here, specifically starting with Ranger as well, because as I was kind of finagling with it, I essentially was just like, you know what, I want to make like a super hyper uber dragon character. I want to make like the dragonest dragon character that I can make while still, being decently cool overall. Because like I was looking through things and I'm like, I don't think there are really any other classes that kind of utilize draconic aspects except for these three. And it was specifically three classes of ranger, monk, and sorcerer. Those three being the ones I believe that have the like subclasses specifically pertaining to dragons. And so I went 7 levels in ranger, I went 6 levels in sorcerer, and then 7 levels in monk to get up to a total of 20. And I specifically took the subclasses Drake Warden for ranger, Draconic Bloodline for sorcerer, and Way of the Ascendant Dragon for monk. Now, I specifically went ranger first because you get first off the highest bit of health
Mhm.
of all of them with a D10 at the start, as well as you get the most skills, proficiencies, and everything too at that point, to start off with, as well as like other bonus stuff and everything. Um, because of that, I believe I have a maximum. Let me even see real quick of 1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4, 5. And I think with a sorcerer, yeah, total of 5 proficiencies. With that, which is great and helpful. It definitely provides you a bit, especially again with going with ranger first. You also get more like armor proficiencies and weapon proficiencies and everything with the martial weapons and medium armor and shields. Whereas with monk and sorcerer, you do not get any of those proficiencies. Really, like you don't get proficient with like any armor or many weapons. Like you like with monk and sorcerer, they get proficiency with like certain simple weapons, but a lot of them they don't because they also just don't really need them, you know. But other than that, I specifically again went all the way down. For those of you who might not be aware, for the subclass ranger for Drake Warden, it is specifically the subclass that, as you might expect, grants you access to a draconic companion, specifically a Drake companion. As an action, you can magically summon the Drake that is bound to you. It appears in an unoccupied space of your choice within 30 feet of you. The Drake is friendly to you and your companions, and it obeys your commands, and you have in-game statistics stat block to reference and utilize. You You specifically can choose like what type of Drake it is, like specifically like what like element that you can tie to it. And you would obviously gain benefits depending on which one that you choose as you get higher up. I specifically chose 776 for the level distribution, specifically because like I'm able to obtain. I do miss out on some ability score improvements, unfortunately, because that I'm still maintaining a relatively low level between all of them.
Mhm.
But it was also, I felt like the best way to still obtain all of the like most important, or at least some of the best abilities of each subclass that can synergize really well with the others. So again, I only get the ability score improvements. I only get 3 ability score improvements because each of them get it at level 4, and those are that's the only amount that I get. But that was enough because I also rolled really well for my stats as well.
Mhm.
My initial rolls were 15, 14, 12, 10, 14, and 12.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty decent spread out
I was curious because
array.
monk is one of those classes that, in my opinion, needs 3 good stats.
I
So I
mean,
was
like it.
curious.
Well. I also, again, I did apply some items to help augment that too, on the off chance that I didn't roll great. Um, but even then, you also get a pretty decent amount of like bonuses. I also specifically chose because I just thought it was really funny. I chose fairy as my race specifically because I love the idea of just like a small or like a tiny little guy, like buzzing and flying about, like literally doing just like kung fu karate moves and like knocking the crap out of people. So this is specifically going to be primarily melee or unarmed combat focused specifically. But obviously augmented with maybe a couple of weapons here or there, like a stat, like a bow staff or something as well, which I think is really cool. And then obviously sorceress magic. And again, I'm really trying, you guys. I am trying to give sorcerer a little bit of due, a little bit of credit. I'm trying to find those like those little things. Again, one of the best things about sorcerer is its flavor and the ability, the role play, that potential that it offers you, right? And the worst thing about sorcerer is its mechanics in almost every way, shape, or form. That being said, Draconic Bloodline is definitely one of the better ones, at least earlier on, because I specifically also took that in regards to, again, the other monk class, because monks get an ability known as unarmored defense, meaning that they can apply both their dexterity modifier as well as their wisdom modifier to their AC. Now, with the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer, you get another ability known as Draconic Resilience. As magic flows through your body, it causes physical traits of your dragon ancestors to emerge. At first level, your hit point maximum increases by 1 and increases by 1 again whenever you gain a level in this class. So not only do you get some extra hit points with that, not a lot because it's just per level, but even a little bit still helps. Additionally, parts of your skin are covered by thin sheen of dragon-like scales. When you aren't wearing armor, your AC automatically equals 13 plus your dexterity modifier.
And it allowed you to stack the wisdom too.
I mean, technically speaking, I don't see any reason why it can't.
Because the thing is, this is not, they do not say natural armor. If it
This is
said natural
true.
armor, then you're screwed because like Tortle,
That's what I'm saying.
can't do
It's
Tortle.
not
No,
natural armor. It specifically says it your AC equals 13 plus your dex
I let it
modifier.
happen. I
And
let it
so,
work.
like, yeah, I don't see any reason why you couldn't technically stack both
I
unarmored defense because you're not wearing any armor.
no.
It's not considered armor at all. It literally is just an extra, like, defense. And it's literally the same as, like, using mage armor, like, without the thing, right? Because
Yeah.
mage armor literally is you just, if you're without wearing armor, you increase your baseline armor class to 13 plus your dex modifier. And with
Right.
unarmored defense, it says again, while beginning at first level, while you are wearing no armor and not wielding a shield, your AC equals 10 plus your dex modifier plus your wisdom modifier.
Yeah. No, I like
So
this
like,
because if you did it with mage armor, it wouldn't work.
yeah,
Because mage armor is a specific thing. Because of this specifically,
it
you can
maybe
stack.
could even work with mage armor
It's
potentially.
the spell, I think, stops it from working. But this works.
Maybe,
I
but
think
this
there
is
are some
still
tables and some DMs that might argue otherwise, but unless, I mean, obviously Sage Advice is a thing, but as written,
like that.
this
Well, that's what I'm
works.
saying. It's like I
Yeah,
don't
that's
see any
awesome.
reason why it
I love
can't,
that.
because it's
No,
still all completely natural, right? It
yeah,
doesn't restrict your movement at all. Like it's not
no.
something that makes you heavier. You literally just have this
Just
like
changes your skin.
innate, yeah, it just changes your skin to be a little bit more resilient, literally, as the feature would suggest. And so therefore, at that level, like once more too, like I currently have my stat array at this point with the additional ability score improvements. I ended up getting it up to a total of my strength is a 10. My dexterity is a 20. My constitution, I believe, was either a 12 or 14. There's some, it's higher now because of a certain item that I took, which I actually didn't even expect to happen. I completely forgot this item has the ability to change your con and increase it. But my intelligence is 12, my wisdom is 16, and my charisma is 16. So like even all with that right there, again, I have a 16 in both wisdom and charisma, meaning it's a +3 just baseline for both of those. Because I am both a ranger and a monk, who both of their primary stats, at least at the start, are dex and wisdom, and I am a sorcerer, their primary stat is usually going to be charisma, dex, or con. Like again, charisma is their highest thing, meaning I have access to spells now to a decent extent. Now, admittedly, as a 6th level sorcerer, I only have access to 3rd level spells, but I believe I
Hey,
do have two,
hey,
three. I mean, again, but that's when things start getting interesting. And you don't need
haze,
a lot
fly,
more. Exactly.
fireball.
Lightning bolts. Like again,
Yeah.
and I specifically took again as a sorcerer, you can shoot for a draconic bloodline. You can choose what type of dragon your like bloodline descends from. I chose bronze for lightning specifically because you get certain abilities that allow you to gain resistances and bonuses to lightning based stuff, as well as the fact that your Drake Warden subclass, depending on what you choose for your Drake, you also get elemental affinities, resistances, and bonuses depending on what element you chose for your Drake. Along with the fact that with the monk, Way of the Senate Dragon, you similarly get the ability to change up your unarmed attacks for any element as part of the chromatic or metallic spectrum, that
Oh
elemental
wow.
spectrum. You can literally, again, at 3rd level, you become a draconic disciple. You can channel power to magnify your presence and imbue your unarmed strikes with the essence of a dragon's breath. Draconic presence in of itself isn't really that important. It is basically like if you fail a charisma, intimidation, or persuasion check, you can use your reaction to reroll the check as you tap into the mighty presence of dragons, and you can only do this once a long rest. Like that's still helpful. You basically just get like a free reroll of like a persuasion or intimidation check, which can be great. But specifically, the biggest aspect is the draconic strike that you get again just at 3rd level. When you damage a target with an unarmed strike, you can change the damage type to acid, cold, fire, lightning, or poison damage. Like, that's phenomenal. Literally, you're fighting against a barbarian who has resistance to bludgeoning damage against normal unarmed strikes. You just turn it into freaking fire damage or poison damage or acid or whatever or lightning. Not to mention, cool thing being is like depending on other aspects of some of the other features of your other subclasses, that can also synergize depending on the damage that you deal, elemental like. Um, you also get ton of dragons. You can speak, read, and write Draconic or one other language of your choice. One aspect I did not account for with doing this Trinity blend is you get access to a lot of freaking languages.
Yeah, every
Like
single one of these, when you take it,
allows you to learn Draconic
Draconic or
or
another
another
language.
language if you already know Draconic. And again, if you take when you become the Draconic sorcerer, you just learn Draconic in and of itself. And so the other subclasses, you can literally just switch out Draconic for another language. And so like you can literally learn like as a fairy, I learn a language of my choice. I chose like Sylvan, and then you can learn like another language for your background. Like I specifically chose a kind of custom background. I usually like custom backgrounds because I feel like you should just be able to choose what skill proficiencies your character would probably be good at or practice at overall. But I specifically chose folk hero as like kind of a background. So it's like a homebrewed folk hero because that's kind of his thing. I figured as a fairy, he's primarily been like a bit of a wanderer of like mountains and like forests and the like. And so he's usually probably just like flown around, helped people out like on his journey. Like he is literally, I kind of got the idea and the inspiration for this character as almost being like a really powerful pseudo dragon kind of thing or whatever, where he's just like a little dude who just kind of flies around and he like has almost the power or presence of like a fully grown like adult dragon, but he's just this little guy who just like he lives on a mountain. He's channeled just the power of like dragons before him and like in this area, and he's like the king of the mountain. He's like this completely unassuming little guy that will absolutely just like he can summon a drake companion that's literally medium size at this point too. So really quick, I can kind of just run through some of his abilities at that point as well. I would say, for the Ranger, you obviously get like, Depth Explorer, all that stuff, similar things that Sam had before as well. For the more draconic aspect of it, you specifically get at 3rd level when you choose a subclass, Draconic Gift. You learn the Thaumaturgy cantrip, which is a ranger spell for you, and you also have Tongue of Dragon, same thing as the others. I basically chose he can speak Gnomish with that one, or I'm sorry, Giant is the one that I chose. And he gets his Drake Companion. I already kind of told you a bit about that. Drake Companion is cool because it literally will get stronger with you kind of as you level up, because it specifically utilizes your proficiency bonus for a lot of its stats and stuff. It's not like super powerful or strong overall, but it's definitely great just to have like a little extra action economy. And as you're going, it's not like super weak either. It literally has immunity to whatever element you choose to give it in the thing. So I made mine a fire Drake specifically because I can drop fireballs now on top of people and him with
fire
them
resistance
and get fire resistance along with that. He won't take any damage from the fireball. He can just keep fighting and he gets added. And not to mention, he also has the ability known as infused strikes. So when another creature within 30 feet of the Drake that it can see hits a target with a weapon attack, the Drake infuses the strike with its essence, causing the target to take an extra 1d6 damage of the type determined by its draconic essence. So you can now start stacking that on top of your attacks at that point. Yep. Like, it's kind of crazy the amount that you can start stacking up. Now, to be fair, it does specifically stipulate with a weapon attack. But again, as I said, like, you're a freaking monk.
They're considered improvised weapons
for
the sake of...
Literally.
Like, unarmed strikes are a weapon attack.
Yeah, unarmed strikes are weapon attacks.
No offense. I mean, because you're not going super far into monk, I'm assuming you could use weapons for this build as well.
That's what I mean. Like, you could use weapons, yeah, specifically. However, I do have certain other items that help offset the fact that like your unarmed strikes are still probably going to be your biggest heavy hitter here, especially with the other things. Because again, like you have that type of stuff. You have also with the ranger build, you specifically have access to more spells. So you have spells of the ranger and spells of the sorcerer, and that allows you to pick from both the like the druid natural spell list as well as the sorcerer arcane spell list, giving you ample defense, utility, support, healing, and offense. So it's like, this guy really is, ironically, I was surprised how well a lot of this seemingly synergizes together. Again, like Sam, I have not been able to actually take it for a true practical test drive. But even with the things that I'm just reading and looking at, so much of this seemingly words as written blend really well together, even with them being at like middling levels, Obviously you get the extra attack once again. For monk, you get your key points as well as a number of other things too. You get the ability known as wings unfurled. Now, as a fairy, I automatically get flight as a thing. My flight, I literally have the ability to have the flight speed that is the same as my walking speed. But With the monk with the monk class, you get access to the abilities known as unarmored movement, which increases your movement speed by a not insignificant amount, even at level 7.
Yeah.
My current just normal move speed is 50 feet.
Nice. And if you use haste, it's 100 and you can fly.
And I have access to haste because I am a 6th level sorcerer. And so it will be 100 feet with haste. I currently have, again, with the bonus of both Draconic Resilience, Unarmored Defense, I have a baseline AC of 21 with no armor. Meaning with haste, that would bump it up to 23. I also have access to the spell Shield, which gives another +5, which would give me an armor class of 28.
If you need it to be.
If I need it to be for a full round at that point. I also, again, for like dex saving throws, I have evasion because I am a 7th level monk, meaning dex saves, even though I don't technically have proficiency in dex saves because I took with ranger, let me see, just to be clear. No, I do have proficiency in dex saving throws. Never mind, because I took ranger first. So yeah, I have proficiency in dex save, so gonna be really hard to take any damage from that. My wisdom is a +3, pretty high, decent for wisdom saves and the like. Constitution is high, so I got pretty decent con saves as well for specifically maintaining concentration on spells, like all of this comes together really nicely. As a 7th level monk, I have access to stillness of mind as well, meaning that I can literally end any effect on me as an action that's charmed or frightened. So I can end that stuff. Wings Unfurled is an ability that isn't necessarily as helpful anymore since I have just natural flying. But it's when you use your Step of the Wind ability, as a monk, you can unfurl spectral draconic wings from your back that vanish at the end of your turn. So while the wings exist, you have a flying speed equal to your walking speed. So it's not really, that doesn't really have any application at this point because I'm a fairy. But what I will say, with Step of the Wind, I can literally dash as a bonus action at that point as well. Meaning if I have haste up, I use Step of the Wind, I could literally move, let's see, 100, 200, dash again
300 feet.
300, and then dash again because of the hasted action. Could I move 600 feet in 6 seconds, Sam?
No.
Because again, you activate haste.
Yeah.
Next turn, you just have 100 feet of movement.
Yeah. So
I use my first action to dash.
100.
So it would be adding 100 to
it's 400 feet.
Yeah, I'd be able to dash 400 feet because I would be
100. Fly 400 feet.
I can fly 400 feet. I can dash for 200, 300, and because it would be
haste. It's 100 feet plus action dash plus bonus action Step of the Wind, which is 300 feet plus hasted action
plus
dash,
hasted action dash, which is 400 feet. Yeah.
I mean, it's nothing with like the Tabaxi haste monk where it's like 1,200 feet in a round.
Yeah, well, also because if you like, because obviously if you go even more into monk, you get even more bonuses to your movement, of course.
But it's still 400 feet in a round is
and 400 feet in any direction, like you're freaking flying at that point. Like that's just crazy.
I'm surprised you've kept a lot of the what you expect these classes to do. Like the ranger and monk, you have the companion, you have the speed, you still have a good. What's your health pool like?
It again, and this specifically happened because my con was increased so high. My health pool is currently at 211 hit points as a ranger, monk, sorcerer multi-class build. That shit is kind of ridiculous.
That's pretty good.
That being the case too, it's like that is like we can even again specifically go into more of the skills and such due to again specific aspects of the ranger. I have one, like I said, I have 5 proficiencies with skills. However, one of those is also expertise.
Yeah, I love the new ranger.
Yeah, that they gave those little again, and it is an optional feature, but I think it is so necessary and fair for the ranger to have because it has so little overall. Even at higher levels, it should technically have a lot of that stuff at lower levels. I have resistance to both fire and lightning damage because, again, fire from the Drake Warden companion and lightning due to my Draconic ancestor with Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer. So basically, every time that I cast, or hang on, let's even just find the specific trait here. Elemental affinity. When you cast a spell that deals damage of the type associated with your Draconic ancestry, you can add a +3 damage to one damage roll of that spell. At the same time, you can spend one sorcery point to gain resistance to that damage type for 1 hour. So I can essentially have resistance to both fire and lightning for 1 whole hour. And fire is just permanent. Lightning I can do as I need because lightning isn't the most common.
Don't you have lightning resistance from your subclass anyway?
No. You don't specifically get lightning resistance from Draconic, or you don't get innate resistance from Draconic bloodline just normally.
Okay.
Until maybe later on. But that would specifically be the Storm Sorcerer that you get that for.
Gotcha.
But the Draconic resilience again provides me with both the bonus 6 HP because I'm level 6 in the class. So I get a +6 HP to that with the plus like the baseline 13 armor class plus dex. And again, nothing says you can't also add your wisdom as a monk to that thing because it's not considered like natural armor.
Just to put it out there, if you don't, you could take like Shocking Grasp for your cantrip and every hour just cast it and get the resistance back.
Exactly.
Point. So like if you need to before a fight, you can resist
you can pre-resist or even just as you're attacking, because again, you're going to be up close and personal a lot of the time with all that movement. And again, as a monk, you're just going to be able to like smash. So it's like you can literally just like Shocking Grasp and then like get your resistance and then you're good to go. You have again,
it's a shame that elemental affinity wasn't when you do damage of these 5 types, you can add your charisma, because that would be even crazier.
That would be even more nuts and insane to that. But again, like you also have access as a sorcerer, you have access to 5 cantrips at this point, which again, sorcerers have the most cantrips of any class at the lower level. Well, but obviously again, that starts to fall off at higher levels too in terms of damage output and utility. But they, again, with that, you have a pretty decent, consistent thing. Because again, you take Shocking Grasp, you take Mold Earth, you take Shape Water, you take like freaking maybe a Firebolt, if you need some range, a little bit more ranged option just in case, you never know. And you're already good to go. And then you have the rest of your spells. You get a total of, at this level, only 7 spells, which again, kind of sucks. You literally only get spells based off of literally like your level +1 or whatever. But it's overall, it's still not bad for your purposes because you're going to be punching and kicking a lot more and attacking anyways, for that matter.
So you went 7-7-6?
Yeah, I went 7 Ranger, 7 Monk, 6 Sorcerer.
6 Sorcerer. Okay.
Because again, both
you get the first 2.
Yeah, you get most of your stuff from Sorcerer right away. Anyway, like again, like the best things that you kind of get for Draconic Bloodline, you get earlier on anyway. Like again, the Draconic resistance and your elemental affinity. Now obviously, if I went 7th level, I'd get access to 4th level spells, I believe at that point, which would be nice, don't get me wrong, but then you'd miss out on the Drake Ranger and then also the evasion / calmness of mind or whatever it is. So it's like you kind of just get a little bit more bang for your buck, because again, for sorcerer, if you're level 8 or level 7, you would only get like 1 level 8 spell. Or level 4th level spell, excuse me.
Yeah, it's not like,
and so it's like it's not really that.
No,
you're not. It's not really that worth it. Like a 4th level spell could be great. There are some great ones for sure, but it's definitely not. I don't think like as equal a thing as being like I get access to like 2 abilities for the monk and like 1 powerful ability for the ranger for its subclass that gives me a free resistance as well as increases the size and power of my Drake Warden or my Drake companion. So it's like, that would seem to be the most obvious kind of, distribution overall that I kind of saw. So I was like, yeah, I like that. I'm going to go with that specifically. let's see. I will now kind of go into some other aspects too, of course, with the spells that I took for him. As I said before, like I took specifically Chromatic Orb, I took Shield, I took Fireball, Lightning Bolt, and Haste, of course. Again, you don't fucking need Fly because you can already fly. Uh Took like, and again, you can obviously take like one thing you have to be aware of. Again, as a sorcerer, you technically cannot change these out. Once you take them, you just have them until you like level up, right? So that's the one thing about it that is a little bit kind of annoying and a little bit just like because it's like, you're kind of stuck with that shit once you kind of choose it. Um But yeah, I was thinking like Chromatic Orb. It may be a Detect Magic because again, always helpful and decent for a situation that you need. I took which one was it? Scorching Ray again, always helpful for when they're far away and the like. Um, Also took freaking Counterspell, just helpful to have against again a potential enemy
Mm-hmm.
combatant.
Always
I
nice to
feel
have.
like it just helps, like especially because again, if like depending on your party composition, not every class has access to counterspell. It's
No.
primarily just wizard, sorcerer, bard, and warlock. And obviously with the warlock, it's a little harder to justify doing counterspell because you have such few spell slots. But with this, because a lot of the spell slots that I would be using would primarily be for like, just, oh, I'm sorry, I actually have access to 5th level spells. What am I talking about? Yeah, duh. Um, or I have a 5th level spell slot, I should say, because I have 7 levels in Ranger and then 6 levels in Sorcerer. So that is another aspect that again it gets a little murky. Like I only have access to 3rd level spells, but I have up to 5th level spell slots because of the fact that again, uh full caster, sorcerer, and then half caster, ranger. So it's like obviously at this level I would technically have around this level of spell slots. Although again, you just gotta remember I am technically considered to be like what a 13th level caster, or maybe even I guess might be more like a 10th level caster, I guess, at this point, which is hence the 5th level spell slot. But that still gives me more things that I can utilize. I have 1 5th level slot, 3 4th level slots, 3 3rd level slots, 3 2nd level slots, and 4 1st level slots. So I have a lot of versatility and resources to spend even with spells. Specifically, as well, I augmented the effectiveness of my spells with some items. I specifically took a +3 Bloodwell Vial, which specifically increases the attack roll, my spell casting focus. It specifically increases a bonus to my spell attack rolls and my saving throw DCs by 3 for my sorcerer spells. So my current attack and save is a +12 for an attack and then a DC of 20. So like that's pretty damn good. Like none of the ranger spells that I took, because for ranger I specifically took like absorb elements, cure wounds,
Yeah. All the fun stuff.
yeah, all the stuff that you really need. Like again, I'm not really going to be using Hunter's Mark a lot. Like I could take Hunter's Mark to get a little extra like damage for like, my attacks, but it might be as necessary. And cool thing is I can also switch out my ranger spells though. Like you can prepare your ranger spells every day. So you can switch those out for things that you need. But I also took like silence, for instance, because again, that would be like if you're fighting another spellcaster, that's you don't need like to cast spells to fight. You get up in their face, you just beat the crap out of them at that point. You just cast silence. It takes away an astronomical amount of things they can do, and you just beat the crap out of them at that point because you're not stuck with that kind of thing. But I took Pass Without Trace because you're gonna be freaking really good at stealth. Took Healing Spirit, maybe some lesser restoration. Again, that's the cool thing. You can kind of like switch out things as you really need to with the ranger spell list because you're not as restricted as the sorcerer spell list. Um
I'm like looking over. I can't believe you actually
Yeah,
put this together.
it's kind of crazy, isn't it? It's
It's
kind
like
of ridiculous.
it like weirdly works.
Like, so yeah, so here's the thing, right? Your unarmed strikes at this level are only going to be a d6 of damage specifically. But once again, you technically will be able to attack up to 4 times with this, as well as the fact that you can add on certain strikes and bonuses based off of your other subclasses that give you an extra d6 of like fire damage from your Drake Warden ability.
So for all intents and purposes, as long as your Drake's up, you do 2d6 per attack.
Yeah.
You can attack up to 4 times with haste, right?
Yeah, or you can attack with haste, you can attack up to 5 times because
Oh,
with a
with
key
flurry of
point, with
blows.
flurry of blows,
Yeah.
and you could also again, you only have 7 key points to be fair, but it only takes 1 key point to do flurry of blows. You
Yeah,
could
and
then
you're not really
potentially
using them for anything
you could
else.
potentially stunning strike them as
Yeah.
well if you want. I also have the ability because of my Way of the Ascendant Dragon. I have Dragon's Breath out to 20-foot
Yeah.
cone or a
Unfortunately,
30-foot line that is 5 foot wide.
it's only 2d6, unfortunately.
It's only 2d6, but it's still part of your attack action.
Yeah, you could technically hit everything in front of you.
You could literally do a wide range of attack for one of those and then attack another 3 times or four
or 4 times
times
with haste. Yeah.
after that. So you even have like a little bit more versatility
Yeah.
with that interchanging. And with that, you could also choose what element you specifically use when you do that. And on
At
top
any
of
given
that,
time.
to be fair, in order to utilize your Drake Warden more effectively, you do have to use your bonus action. But once more, if you're already hasted, you could technically get three attacks and then bonus action have your Drake attack as well.
Well, technically, you don't even have to, as long as the Drake Warden is with you, you do
Yeah.
the extra damage.
Yeah.
So
So it can
technically,
continuously give you that extra point of damage too. So it's like you don't necessarily have to have it attack, but you could
all you have
technically
to it
attack.
moves on its own. So
Yeah, but it does specifically state that you like in order for it to do like something else, you have to use
sure.
your bonus action to on your turn to command it take another action.
Oh, right.
Otherwise,
This is interesting. Okay.
the only action it takes on its turn is the dodge action. So you would have to use your bonus action to command it to do something. But then again, even with that, it's like you still, if with haste up, you would get. So here's what I would say, right? You could cast a spell at that point, right? You could cast a spell as a bonus action, have your Drake do something at that point. Next round, where you get like, you cast a spell like haste or whatever, right? You cast
Yeah.
haste that round. You have your hasted action. So you attack once with your hasted action. Use your bonus action to then have your Drake attack, or maybe even you just do flurry of blows potentially with that thing. Because let's see, its bite attack is still only like 1d6 plus proficiency bonus.
Yeah.
So like again,
At level
infused
7,
strikes.
it's 2d6.
Yeah.
The only problem is
like,
infused strike is only 1 attack per round.
Yeah, but it's still like again, like you
It's
can
free
still
damage.
you can still basically, and it only activates when it hits, of course.
Yeah.
So it's like if you just power like things up to attack and to hit, it's like you get just that free extra damage to one attack, but still the fact that you can attack, like, because normally think about it, you'd only be able to attack twice as a ranger anyway, for the most part, unless you had haste. You just happen to be a monk that can attack potentially up to 5 times with haste. So it's like you're still getting an extra free bit of damage of that type. You get that resistance. Like it is more so there as like, because you could also ride it. Like technically speaking,
Yeah.
Like, and once you get to 7th level, it grows wings and it becomes a medium creature and it can fly now. Technically speaking, per the thing, you wouldn't be able to ride it and fly with it at that level. But because you're a fairy, you can fly by yourself anyway. So now you have this Drake Warden that can, or you have this Drake that can fly around as a medium creature. I believe. Let's even see real quick. Deals an extra. So yeah, the bite attack now would also deal an extra 1d6 of fire damage to a creature. So it would technically be a 2d6 damage now per his bite attack as well. And it can fly around as well. What is its flying speed? Drake smaller. So it's equal to its walking speed. And the Drake, I believe, would just have, what is it? Hit points. It has a 40-foot fly speed.
40-foot fly speed.
So I have a 50-foot fly speed. This thing has a 40-foot fly speed. And we can literally just buzz around a dude and like just pick at him and attack him. Like, again, I just get extra shit. We can like, you have so many options. Like you could literally have, again, your Drake, if you wanted to, like, if you're fighting multiple opponents or like somebody else or an enemy that's like far away, you can have your Drake, you know, fly after it. You could snipe them from far away with like a spell. And then your Drake, as a bonus action, you could command your Drake to attack them. So you could literally like still, your Drake has application if for whatever reason you can't get up close to them to start like just beating the dog water out of a person. You can fire off your spells at range like Scorching Ray or Firebolt or a Fireball literally at the dude. Your Drake Warden wouldn't be hurt by the fireball. It would take no damage, and then you just bonus action. It bites them for an extra 2d6 of damage at that point. Like, there's so much versatility and flavor, along with the fact, like, who doesn't freaking love dragons? You are the quintessential draconic entity or entity at this point. Like, it's kind of crazy. Yeah. Like,
you're just very dragon themed.
Because like I offset again as a ranger, or not as a fairy, like one of the, like, you know, the higher level draconic sorcerer bloodline abilities is you grow draconic wings or whatever, right? You don't need that because now you'll be just almost as fast as you probably could be, excuse me, at that level with the monk, but you can just fly anytime now. You always have your flight and always have your wings. Like, you don't get a lot of other bonuses as a fairy, to be fair, but you get a little extra magic, you get a little extra, like, again, like, I was incredibly surprised just how well this all came together when I started putting it together. Because I was like, I just want to combine like all of the dragon like themed subclasses really quick. Or at least a decent amount of them where I was like, this is cool. Really and is. Again, I will say the third and I also specifically put a dragon hide belt of +3. Meaning that all of my key abilities are now the save for my key is now even higher. So any key or any like stunning strikes or whatever else now that I do is increased to +3. So let me see real quick. Where are my key features to see like where the what are my things at here? Deflect missiles. There we go. So currently my key save is 17. It doesn't, for whatever reason, it doesn't specifically add the +3 from the Dragonhide belt to it automatically, unfortunately. So it would actually be a 20. It would be the same DC as my sorcerer spells. Like, and it's the same DC, I believe. Well, no, it wouldn't be the same DC for my ranger spells. My ranger spells don't have any like saves specifically. So it's literally like everything is still the same. All of my attacks, like my melee attacks or weapon attacks, they're a +11 to hit. My spell attacks are a +12. That's the only, like, they're only one +1 more than that. Like, it's kind of crazy how versatile. Like, this is like the exceedingly versatile class. And I literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I have 9 languages. I have 9 languages with this. I have proficiency with both light, medium armor, and shields with this. I'll never use those things because there's no point, but I do. I have proficiency with martial weapons and simple weapons if I wanted to. Like, I was not expecting this. Now, to be fair, I will say I think it really did come together a lot too, because I also have the last item for, as per, you know, the 3 attunement slot maximum. I took Gloves of Soul Catching. So on top of everything else, these are the things that increased my con to 20. I have my current stat distribution is strength is 10, dex is 20, con is 20, intelligence is 12, wisdom is 16, and charisma is 16. So that brought my health up, along with the bonus from the Draconic Resilience, to a total of 211 hit points, with a baseline armor class of 21, as per just the features and abilities that I have, not including the bonus from haste and then shield on top of that if I want. Gloves of Soul Catching. Also, after you make a successful unarmed strike while wearing these gloves, you can use the gloves to deal an extra 2d10 force damage to the target, and you regain a number of hit points equal to the force damage dealt. Alternatively, instead of regaining hit points in this way, you can choose to gain advantage on one attack roll, ability check, or saving throw you make before the end of your next turn. It's kind of stupid how well this kind of works. Again, I have all of them.
I mean, obviously you are a little bit limited in the breadth of your power just because you've split up the classes, but to make something you made something comparable.
I mean,
it works.
I wouldn't even say it's like, again, that's the funny. It's like all of these, none of these have even gotten to the halfway point of level. They're all 7, 7, 6. They're all like high mid, they're low mid range like levels. And yet all of the abilities, again, that you get, all of the stuff that you gain at those levels, like with their synergy and how they complement each other with the subclasses and features, it's kind of crazy. It's like, now the real question would be obviously how this would look and play out in actual gameplay. Like if you, for instance, had to build up to this. Now, this is one thing I do want to we want to clarify right away, audience, is like these dude what if like options and things that we bring to the table more than often are gonna, like, we're gonna be doing them at like level 20, so you can just see the full benefits and extent of what they have. But obviously, when doing this kind of stuff, you probably don't want to maybe jump into it like during an actual game unless you are very experienced, right?
But, I mean, there's ways to build, I think, a lot of
there
this
are
organically, but you're gonna have moments where you're not gonna be very good.
Yeah. There's gonna be a bit of a period where you're gonna probably fall off in certain ways, because these kinds of things, like multi-classing, is a very tentative, technical, process and thing. It's not gonna be easy. It's gonna be a thing that it's gonna be like kind of pulling, like, pulling teeth a little bit to finally get to that place where you're like, really like, dude, this whole thing just came together.
Yeah.
Like, whoa, dude, what if, dude, this worked? Holy shit. And sometimes it's not. They're also gonna have those moments where you're like, wow, this did not work at all like I hoped that it would. And those times do definitely suck, especially if you put a lot of time and effort into it. But again, it's like this. I was pleasantly flabbergasted and surprised with how well all of these came together. I was expecting this to be far less viable and subpar in terms of effectiveness. But it's like, it works. It works. Technically speaking, too, I only chose fire and lightning myself for the resistances, but you could even go, so you could change it to poison. You could change it to cold damage. You could change it to acid if you wanted. I don't know why you do that, because not a lot of things, almost nothing has acid that it attacks you with. But still, it's like, you could choose whichever ones of those resistances
if you're fighting against dragons, you
that's
just
what I'm
choose
saying.
which.
Like, and obviously the fire and lightning are usually the most powerful and dangerous, fire being the most prolific. Cold and lightning are usually much less prolific depending on who you're fighting. There are a lot of like lightning and cold spells though, so if you're fighting a spellcaster, choosing either of those, is a good secondary as well to the fire. I would say, again, like, you do maybe want to, specifically for your Draconic bloodline, you want to choose either lightning or ice. Because again, it also has to do with your spells. And like your Drake Warden, for instance, where it's like, with the resistance from your your Draconic ancestor, your elemental affinity, you do have to cast a spell to then, that deals damage, to then get that resistance for an hour. So you can do that with either, like Sam just said, if you take a cantrip, if you have Ray of Frost or Firebolt or Shocking Grasp or Lightning or whatever, then you can instantly activate that resistance right away as soon as you deal damage to whatever thing. You can literally just deal damage to like a freaking door, in my opinion. And I don't see why you technically couldn't just do that, because it's just either way. But point being is like you can mix it around as much as you want. Like you're not limited or restricted. And again, you get that ability at 6th level. So it's like what you do and what you take, like it's you have so much options for how you want your character to kind of go through things, right? Because you should obviously start with Ranger because again, you get the most bang for your buck at level 1 for the Ranger specifically. Because again, you would lose out on some of those proficiencies as well as the D10 hit dice and everything without that. Just some of the skills. But after that, though, you can kind of go any direction you really want. Like, I would even say, because again, the irony of it is, too, is being you might even want to, at like these lower levels, go Sorcerer. Because again, at lower levels, Sorcerer are still okay. Like, they because of the fact they get a lot of cantrips at early level, that offsets the fact that they don't have a lot of spells. And you won't really need to be using a lot of your spells anyway if you have both monk and ranger. So it's like, yeah, it's kind of crazy how well this kind of works. Because all you really need to focus on for sorcerer is your charisma, just a little bit. But obviously for all of them, Dex benefits all of them. Like Dex is kind of like because again for
Dex is one of those stats that it helps everyone.
Well, that's what I mean. Well, again, it only just wouldn't help like heavy armor users or strength users. You know that's the thing. Point being is for these classes, like both the ranger and the monk utilize both Dex and wisdom very heavily in their thing. And so because they synergize really well, and because Dex also will help sorcerers because they have no armor proficiency at all, just you can keep Dex as your primary stat that will just benefit all 3 of them incredibly. And then you just have to focus on wisdom and charisma for the most part. And then again, you don't even have to take gloves of soul catching. You could literally get like an amulet of health. You get an amulet of health that bumps your con up to 19. And you don't even have to worry about putting anything into your con at that point either, because your con just becomes 19 with an amulet of health. You know?
Yeah, it's you did a good job here. I'm pleasantly surprised by
right?
how well that works.
It's pretty damn cool. This particular character I have appropriately named Briones Knickknack Paddywhack. He's again, he's a fairy. He's like he is a mountain fairy who is like kind of raised and trained by like dragons on the mountain and stuff. And he just, he's just really like kind of wild-haired fairy, mountain fairy that just like has a lot of kind of aggressive, like that dragon aggro and presence and confidence and stuff. He believes he is like a fully grown giant dragon. He believes he's like a fully grown like adult dragon, like legitimately. Like nobody like he it's like what was that one like in the what is it, was it the third Ice Age movie, I think, where like the female woolly mammoth thinks that she's like a possum instead of being a woolly mammoth.
I only saw the first one.
Yeah, I mean that's the only way you really need to see. The others aren't really that awesome in my opinion, but
unless you want more Ray Romana.
Hey, everybody loves Raymond.
Yeah, if you didn't get enough from then, I'll watch more.
But either way, I said there was that whole thing where that like she thought that she was a thing. This is the opposite, where he's like a small, tiny little creature who thinks he's like a big, like huge or even gargantuan dragon. And then has a pet dragon, a drake familiar, a pet dragon companion as well. Yeah, any other questions that you might have for me, Sammy, in regards to this at all?
I really enjoyed that. I was surprised by how well.
I might legitimately, I would legitimately love to find an opportunity to use this guy
to play that
now, like just to see. I want the actual practical application of this in action, like to see how well this could freaking work, because it's just kind of nuts actually. But you know what, y'all? Hey, I do believe that is all we've got for you today for the first ever Dude, What If? And in my opinion, it was a rousing success. We hope you guys enjoyed this fun, interesting, crazy, wacky ride that we brought you on, kind of showcasing the ironically, this was a particularly positive episode where a lot of the options sunk up really well.
Well, we try. We try.
Thank you guys so much. Again, please be sure to like and comment on the video, subscribe to the channel, share it with anybody who you think might love to hang around with us and listen to all of our crazy, inane babbling and shit. Once again, we appreciate y'all, everything that you do for us, and catch you all later. Okay, bye.